We are not recording yet, so just I'll let you know when we're up on all our platforms. And okay, so I see you there.
Joe, can you turn mine down a little bit?
And your headphones you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
All right. Let's see. That's good right there. So we're there. Let's see if we're on Twitter.
100 days.
100 days till midterms. They are so screwed.
I really like the fact that Biden's going ahead with building some of the wall in some areas.
Well, the whole what's his name? Who did they say they just offed?
Oh, is there
Yeah,
Zurahiri, I think.
but didn't CNN report that he had asthma or he died of pneumonia a few years ago?
Yeah, they've been saying that for years.
Or was it?
CNN said that they CNN CNN said that they that he died of pneumonia. Well, hey, it's CNN. It's got to be true, right?
Absolutely. Number one news group in the nation.
Yeah, no.
And their ratings are created. Their profits dropped below $1 billion for the first time in a number of years.
Well, did you hear about Did you Did you hear about The View? They tried to reach out to DeSantis.
Yeah.
And he said no.
Yeah, and they're like, "Hey, what clip do you want to talk about? This one that you were saying this about?"
That really would have been good if DeSantis was on there and they would have said something about like the "Don't Say Gay" bill or whatever it is.
He'll be
then
like,
have DeSantis educate him on TV.
Yeah, where does it say that? No, maybe like once we start going into there. Ray, do you have anything to add? Maybe at the end, especially with that bill passing.
What, HR 1808?
Yeah.
We're just going to have to wait till after Labor Day.
Okay.
I don't think, unless they, throw a curveball here in the next 2 days, it's going to be when they come back.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're kind of surmising, even though this is not being recorded right now, that we're thinking that there might be an attempted school shooting Labor Day area with all the kids being back in school and stuff like that.
You got to know one's coming.
Well, yeah, because they just want to prove their point. But that's not here or there. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, go live, and
I'm going live right now.
And I'll count you down, okay?
Going live.
All right, ready? And we are going to start recording. Okay, we are at 3:30. And we're going in 3. Oh, there we go. 3, 2.
Hey, everybody. This is John with Ubaldi Reports, the one website that provides fact, not fiction, on issues facing America, whether internationally or domestically. With me is my fellow co-host Joe Bitts and Ray Krause. Both of them are Marines. Joe was a combat Marine who was wounded in Iraq, and we're just 3 enlisted Marines talking about issues facing America and just providing fact, not fiction. So there's a lot to talk about, but today's podcast is strictly going to be revolving around we're 100 days out from the midterm elections, and is Washington paying attention to the issues that you're concerned about, or they're more or less focusing on issues they're concerned about?
And what would be the issues? What are the top issues right now when it comes to America?
It depends who you talk to. If you talk to the Washington Democratic Beltway, they're focused on climate change, January 6th, LGBTQ issues, where most of Americans are focused primarily on, we got high inflation, gas prices, even though they're coming down, but still gas prices are much higher than they were January 2021. And then also food prices and shortages. We still have shortages of baby formula, and the shelves I think they're short like 33%, and many families can't get the baby formula they need, and this is going to be something they're going to be facing all the way into the fall and early winter. So these are the issues Americans are facing. And then crime in our urban core, our cities. I work at a company that supplies law enforcement with its equipment and its vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
but we also sell firearms. And we've got people coming in, and they're scared to death. They want a firearm for protection. I was reading something on the news, even in the blue states, citizens are wanting to arm themselves just so they have something to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fear out there. But this isn't what Washington's talking about. They're so consumed with climate change, LGBTQ issues, the cultural issues, and not enough on kitchen table topics of how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to fill up my tank of gas? Can I get the items that I need? This is what Americans are concerned about.
Well, we got something already.
Okay.
I'm going to do Darnell Lesper, if that's right. Let me know. What does any president have to do with worldwide global inflation?
Well, there's two parts to that. A lot of it, not so much, but then there's a lot of parts they do. And one of the big thing is what's driving a lot of this is rising fuel prices. Europe is going through this right now. Now they're getting, I know it's August, but you have to look 2 or 3 months down the road. There looks like there's going to be a shortages of natural gas,
Mm-hmm.
and they're beholden to Russia. It's the same thing here in this country. Energy prices are coming down, but in a couple months we're going to be into the fall and into the winter where it starts getting cold, especially up in the Northeast, and we have a shortage of natural gas, so that's going to cause problems there. Now, our inflation is much higher than some parts of Europe and some parts of the Asian economy. So it does have what the president does have a ripple effect across the country, across the world. And there's an old adage: when America coughs, the world gets a cold. So presidents have some say about the inflation, not just here, but sometimes abroad.
With the building up of monkeypox, are they trying to put like another pandemic in effect or another?
It could be. I mean, I don't have much information on that. I was just listening to some of the experts. We do have the vaccine
Mm-hmm.
for the monkeypox. We've had it for a considerable amount of time, but they just haven't produced enough of the vaccine for monkeypox where you're still seeing shortages across the country.
So with the 100 days coming up, what's the Biden administration? Are they doing anything to kind of back the Democrats in order to have a successful midterm, or is it just kind of throwing them out to the wolves?
So repeat that question again.
So is the Biden administration kind of backing up the Democrats when it comes to these midterms to kind of, or are they just like, hey, you're on your own for this one. We got other things we're working on.
Right now, no matter what the Biden administration does, it's going to be a little bit too late. And they're still doubling down. Like this recent potential passage of the Manchin Schumer bill, which is titled the Inflation Reduction Act. It does nothing to reduce inflation. And you have the Wharton School of Business, and you have others who rate this. And these are nonpartisan groups that this has nothing to do with reducing inflation. It has everything to create, to lessen the job creation, reduce jobs, and it also is just going to increase the deficit. So, but what the president's doing, there's nothing he can do right now that's going to starve off what's going to happen come November, because it takes time. It's like the old adage, you can't turn a carrier around on a dime. Well, you can't turn the economy around on a dime, and he's not changing his policies.
What does Texas Race have to say, Ray?
He said, why is Joe filling in the gaps, quote unquote, of the wall, but he said not another inch would be built?
It could be that he doesn't want this to be a major campaign issue. And Arizona was one of those battleground states that flipped from Republican to Democrat in 2020. And I think he wants to try to shore up that base to make sure it doesn't become a losing state for him.
Well, with that also, would it be considered Biden finishing what Trump started, or is it Biden finishing and or just kind of finishing the wall and what Trump put in place?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's also Biden can say, yeah, the border is secure, because that's the whole mantra they've been saying. The border is secure. Joe Biden has said that. Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Director, said the border is secure, and this is the most secure it's ever been. And when evidence alludes elsewhere, and then I work at this law enforcement company, and we get a lot of federal law enforcement agencies that come in, and we get a lot of Homeland Security and some of the Border Patrol agents as well. And they tell me the same thing. It's worse than it's ever being reported right now. Especially, I talked to a civilian who works for the Coast Guard dealing with customs, and he said that the illegal amount of illegal drugs, especially marijuana, but most importantly fentanyl, is just pouring across the border. And that's a problem, because there's more people dying from the ages of 18 to 49 that are dying from any other diseases combined.
So we're getting a lot of questions from Darnell on TikTok. Well, why don't you go for it, Ray?
I'm going to go with what are the current unemployment numbers? 1. What are the current job creation numbers? 2. How is the stock market doing? 3. And then how many deportations have happened under Biden?
Well, the last one on the deportations, they've dropped considerably. I don't have the exact numbers. I would have to look at Homeland Security, but these are well below where they were under President Donald Trump, and even below where they were under Barack Obama, who was nicknamed the deporter-in-chief. Also, there's been record numbers of illegals entering the country. It was close to 2 million in 2021, and we just set the record for 2022, and we still haven't gone through the full month of August and September, so we could be well over 3 million, and that's not including the gotaways, the one that the Border Patrol agents haven't apprehended. Now, as for unemployment numbers, they have come down, but you have to look deeper into the numbers. I think it's like 3.6%, and we'll know more on Friday when July's unemployment numbers are released. And what I mean by that is it's 3.6 from the last unemployment report, but also we're still about so many people not in the labor force. If you look at it, if you look at the 4.4 million out of the labor force, they're not counted. So we should be well over 5%, because the labor participation rate is still 1 million or almost 2 million jobs short of where we were prior to the pandemic.
So going with, so technically, or depending on how whoever defines it, we are in a recession. But are there any positive numbers when it comes to defining that number? We all know that negative GDP growth in 2 quarters means recession.
Correct.
But if unemployment's up, or if there are surges when it comes to job numbers and stuff like that, would that maybe contradict the GDP?
It all depends, because when you're right that 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP typically signifies a recession. The Biden administration is hanging its hat on, look at the amount of jobs that are being created. But if you go back to the actual numbers and you look deeper into that, there are more people out of the labor force. Our labor participation rate is still 2 million individuals out of the labor force than we were of February 2020. So, but if you also look at, I just saw something today that debt by family has skyrocketed because of inflation. People are having to dip into their savings or into their credit card to pay for things that they normally wouldn't have had to pay for. So you have that. Then you have the housing starts have come down. A lot of other key metrics have dropped considerably. Small businesses are having problems. And the unemployment, because we came out of a pandemic, employers needed workers, so they're reluctant to shed these workers. But now you're seeing in July, first-time claims for unemployment insurance claims went up for the first time in 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get a better gauge, or at least an idea of where we're at come Friday.
So you have this nice saying: you can't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime.
Correct.
Is there anything that the Democratic Party could do in order to kind of maybe garner that support, or maybe even come in a little bit better when it comes to this election coming up in the next 100 days?
Well, what they need to do is they need to reverse course, and they need to do a 180-degree course correction. That means you have to. The biggest one is you have to take the boot off the back of our energy sector. Europe is screaming for natural gas. We could sell them all the natural gas because we got plenty of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can get the oil companies to drill. That means you have to take the financial pressure off them. They can't get the capital, and they're based that when they look at things, they don't look at 2-3 months to an election.
Mm-hmm.
They look at 5 years down the road, 10 years. So if they're going to invest in new drilling permits or new drilling leases, they also want to make sure the infrastructure's there. So that means they're going to need capital. Take the Keystone XL pipeline. How many companies invested in that pipeline to only see the government say, we're going to shut it down,
Mm-hmm.
so they lose their investment? So right now, there's no incentive for the energy companies to invest back into the production in America. So, but then you also have to get rid of the tax burden and the regulatory burden that has been placed on small businesses. You do some of those things, that will at least send a message that you're serious about fixing some of these problems. And that includes fixing the supply chain problem, working with the companies. How do we fix to make sure we have food in our grocery store shelves? How do we end the supply chain problem with regarding baby formula
Mm-hmm.
and the like? So you start working on that. That could at least send a message.
So I'm going to read this. Zenobia 921, inflation punishes the prudent while crypto gives future hopes. Your thought?
I'm not too well versed on the crypto side, but inflation does punish the average middle class workers, because when they go to the grocery store, they're on a tight budget. So that means that their food costs, like, okay, take you guys. Joe, you're a family man.
Yeah.
You go to the grocery store, egg prices are a little higher than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
Meat, chicken, fish, vegetables. Gas prices are much higher. It costs more to do things that you once did. Even for you, Ray, we're both under that same very tight budget. Rent is much more expensive now than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. If you want to get an apartment, it costs much more to get that same apartment than it would have a year, 2 years ago. And then if you decide to go, well, I got to get something cheaper, that means you got to live further out, and you got to commute in. That means more gas. And if you want to get a newer car or upgrade your car, you can't find it because costs have gone up. So costs have gone up on everything.
All right. So good old Beach Baby has a good question for us.
Okay.
How do we get back to having government work for the people? It seems to have gotten lost.
Well, that's an easy answer right
Well, the
there.
big way to get for government to get back to working for the American people is get the government smaller. The government has gotten much larger over the decades, but it becomes less efficient. We've seen that, okay, all of us come from the military. We've seen the VA, and we've seen the inefficiencies there. Government has gotten less efficient, but has gotten larger, not better. So I would say make it smaller, gut out the waste in government. So they're not duplicating each other. What is their core mission of each government agency, and make them force them to work off their core mission, not go off on these little tangents.
Well, Robert Steed on TikTok put up I don't know how you figure this point out, but it says if people are tight on their budget, they aren't middle class. That doesn't. I don't think that.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah.
You can be tight on your budget and not be in the middle class. I mean, I don't put myself in the middle class because I'm struggling, and Joe and Ray know my financial situation, but living basically paycheck to paycheck.
Well, but also, like, how do you define middle class? Is it your yearly income? Is it
There's a certain,
or is it just like your net worth?
there's a certain there's a certain income level that this defines you of middle class, upper middle class, and then it goes into the next level from up into the wealthy areas.
Okay.
But everybody's on a budget. But even right now, you can still be middle class, but on a very tight budget, and your dollar doesn't go as far as it once did.
So what's this new, I guess, Build Back Better plan, smaller, that Manchin just kind of dumped in?
What it is,
What was it called? The inflation what?
it's the Inflation Reduction Plan.
Okay.
Now,
That's real funny.
Oh my God.
okay, but
That's hilarious.
they put something in, and what it does, it gives more money for climate change. It gives more money for, or actually taxes more, and then it adds more, gives a bigger budget to the IRS so they go after so-called tax cheats. But it hasn't passed yet, and we'll know by Friday because the one senator who has to sign off on it, and she's been eerily silent, is Kristen Sinema from Arizona.
Okay, so she could be the savior of not letting that go through.
She could say, I'm not supporting this,
So why was Manchin the target?
because Manchin's been always the target for the whole time. He's been taking a lot of the arrows that the Democrats threw at him because he was reluctant to go along with this. And Kristen Sinema was number 2, but because he caved, and one of the reasons that the speculation that he caved, he gets a pipeline that goes across his state into Virginia. So, and it does, and there's other tax. I think it was the Tax Foundation. They, as a nonpartisan group, they ruled that this does nothing to reduce the debt. It actually increases the debt.
Yeah.
Increases inflation over the course of a number of years. You had the Wharton School of Business and University of Pennsylvania said the same thing. So this is not going to really help the Democrat, and it's misnamed as the Inflation Reduction Act, which it does nothing to do to reduce inflation.
Well, it's just like if you want a bill passed, put it, every veteran gets a home bill, and if you don't sign it, you hate veterans, kind of thing.
Well, that was the whole thing, and it was the Republicans did a bad job of explaining it, and it was basically discretionary and non-discretionary, and there was $400 billion that the Democrats, if they passed the original plan, went through over the weekend. They could have used that $400 billion for anything they wanted that was not related to veterans. And that's what the Republicans needed to sell, but it was Jon Stewart got up there and just lashed out at Republicans, and it was so unfair and not – it was disingenuous for him to do that because he didn't explain why the Republicans voted the way they did.
You know, I got a great idea. You let veterans speak on whatever bill you're trying to pass for them, because we're the ones that kind of look into it and find out the nitty-gritty. And, you know, just like some other veteran organizations or non-for-profits kind of use veterans to kind of fund their
But see, the other thing, Joe, is a lot of these bills, almost all the bills passed by Congress, they need to be standalone bills. Because what they do, like the transportation bill, they'll add so much pork into that if you vote no, you're the bad person, but nobody looks at what's also in that bill.
Well, is there something they can do about that?
Well, they used to be able to, until recently, got rid of earmarks and amendments, but that's part of the legislative process. They need to eliminate that that everything that's going to be put in has to come to a vote on that particular amendment. It can't just be added in at the last minute where nobody knows about it, and then then you're sitting down reading this 2,000-page bill. That would eliminate a lot of our deficit spending and getting a lot of items that are unnecessary because it fits into somebody's demographic.
You know, I'm gonna say this. Darnell stated it's in the bill that all funding must be used for veteran care.
That's partly true, but there was a part of that bill, the original one, there was in whether discretionary or non-discretionary, that part of that $400 billion could go to wherever they deemed necessary, whether it was related to veterans or not. It didn't even have to be part of the burn pit issue.
He also followed up saying any funding reallocation would have to have been approved by Congress.
True and not true, because a lot of times Congress throws things in and they don't get the approval. They just it's like that non-discretionary discretionary bill. It gets in and then they can spend it how they want to spend it.
Mm-hmm. So, what maybe so that the Republicans have like a successful midterm, what can they do? Or can they like stay the course? Is that Trump stamp of approval? Is that benefiting these candidates?
It can go two ways. Some would say that's a benefit. Some would say that's a negative. For the Republicans to be successful, they got to take the playbook of Glenn Youngkin, who won in Virginia back in November of 2021. Stick to the core issues that Americans are focused on. That is inflation, gas prices, energy prices, food prices, education, crime, things that are tangible to them. I wouldn't spend so much time on the cultural issues. Everybody knows Republicans tend to be pro-life. You can put that as an issue, but your core issue should be how are you going to tackle rising fuel prices, gas prices? What are you going to do about inflation? What are you going to do about food prices? And then crime. How are you going to solve the crime so people feel safe walking their neighborhoods? You stick to those, and Republicans will be successful.
So, for like you personally, are you more of a party line voter, or have you kind of maybe looked at independents or Democrats in certain?
I'm more
in certain areas.
Years ago, I was strictly party line voter, strictly Republican. Now, as I got older and I started to read more and understand more, I'm still conservative, but I lean sometimes more independent, more pragmatist, so we can get back to. We've got to reduce our debt. I would criticize some of the Republicans, especially when they talk about national defense. I'm a big supporter of national defense, but at the same time, our defense budget is so bloated that there needs to be reductions, and we need to streamline the federal government. And I've said this many times on this program. We need to reduce the federal government to make it more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we get a bigger government doesn't make it more effective.
Okay.
Like example, I would take the Department of Agriculture. You're moving out of Washington, you're going to Kansas or Iowa. That's where the constituency, that's where the farming communities are at.
Okay.
And then cut back the department to only that deals with legislation stays in Washington. Everybody else is out into the hinterlands.
So where would you put the IRS?
The IRS they can stay where they are, because they have to be centered in Washington, I guess. But they can be scaled back to see what is your job. Your job is to collect the taxes, but we need to make sure you're more efficient than you are now. Because what we do is we give government billions of dollars, but we don't look at where's that money going.
So Ray kind of threw a TikTok at me earlier today. Does the EPA have a task force, or?
What do you mean a task force?
Like they were drawing guns and they were kind of hemming up this couple for, I guess, illegally selling race car parts. Was that it?
Auto parts.
Yeah, they were illegally selling auto parts, but I mean, it was like EPA on the jacket, and they were just like guns drawn, holding them down.
No.
Does the IRS have like the same kind of?
IRS has an investigative agency component to it to go after tax crimes, but it depends how they've been expanded.
But are they going to draw guns on you if you avoid your taxes?
With the EPA, what you're going to, I haven't seen that, and I would have to look into that a little bit more. But a lot of these federal agencies have gotten so big and so large, and they've gone beyond their stated mandate, that a lot of these agencies could save the government a lot more money by shrinking but becoming more effective, going by what is your mission of the EPA, what is the mission of the IRS, and stick to your mission, much like what the Supreme Court said in that West Virginia case. You guys need to stay in your lane and let the lawmakers, the Congress, do its job, and that's telling Congress you need to do your job.
Darnell, I see what you're commenting, but I'm going to take this one. What can the federal government do about crime in Kansas?
They can use a lot of federal resources. Some of the crime, they can help with more money for federal train, have federal agents train local law enforcement community. But the biggest problem with the rising crime is a lot of these urban core like Philadelphia, Chicago, we know about, New York. The cities have progressive prosecutors who want to change the criminal justice system by not prosecuting people. So a lot of the crime is localized. Murder, robbery, these are all localized crimes. The feds can help out by training these, but if without doing bail reform, rechanging the criminal justice, so you're actually charging people when they commit crimes and holding them accountable. That's not happening in a lot of these urban centers.
So it would virtually change out all the people who get to kill somebody and they get, probation or 2 years, and then they get back out on the street.
Look at the example in New York. It was last week. You had a 16-year-old kid attack 2 police officers. He was fighting with the one police officer. And then when they arrested him, he goes to court. Prior to that attack on the police officer, he had a robbery charge, a weapons charge with having a loaded firearm, and an assault on a police officer. He's 16 years old. What did he get? They released him on his own recognizance, and then I think he got like a work farm. That was it. Now, 3 of those charges were serious felonies.
Right.
But he got released. What does that say about crime in America?
That it's okay.
Well, Rita's last comment, it was really good.
Okay. Crime in cities are about poverty. You don't address the reasons for crime, the cycle continues.
That's a good point. If you look at poverty is a lot of the problems, but also education is. And when I say by education, my father only had a 5th grade education. You look at across these urban core in a lot of these states, 70%, and this isn't me saying this, and I've said this numerous times, 70% of black and Hispanic children are deficient at grade level in math and English. We spend as a nation $800 billion between the federal, state, and local level on education. But yet we have one of the lowest achievement gaps or achievement levels of any industrialized country. So if you want to fix poverty, you've got to fix education. But look at these cities, these schools. Take Baltimore. This is before the pandemic. There were 9 out of 13 high schools. 9 out of 13. Of those 9, there had about 3,000, 3,500 kids. Not one could pass the state exam. Not one. So you're graduating kids who can't read at a proper level or can't do English at a proper level. What kind of job are they getting? That perpetuates that poverty system.
So I kind of want to maybe gear up for next week where, we've come to this before and we're kind of facing it right now with Biden and they're trying to look for someone to kind of take his spot. Let's kind of look at it between the 3 of us, who would be a good contention for the next president, but from your view or from our view of who would be a good Democratic representative for the next election.
No, and there's two candidates. I'll just throw this out there. I can't remember their names. There's the governor of Kentucky. He's in a red state, but he's a Democrat. And then there's the governor of Rhode Island. I was reading a little bit about. He also has a pretty good moderate. These are 2 moderate Democrats.
Okay.
So I could look at them, look at their record, look what they're about.
Yeah.
And then we can see how they would fare in the current climate that we're in. Okay,
John. So how can they go about getting a hold of you?
They can get a hold of us by going to ubaldireports@gmail.com. That's ubaldireports@gmail.com. Or you can go to all our social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, obviously TikTok. We're on
Getter.
We're on Tumblr.
No, we're not on Tumblr yet.
Okay.
I don't think we want to be there.
Okay, Getter, but we're on a lot of these different platforms. And then you can check all these different streaming sites, and you can see our past episodes of what's going on.
Yes. So, and Ray, you are really heavily into the Second Amendment. So, if they won't have any questions for you, how can they get a hold of you?
So we could talk anything about guns, Second Amendment, gun control, the bills. You get a hold of me at raymond.aags, raymond.aags@gmail.com. And just to add, they haven't moved anything on the HR 1808. They have 2 days left to do it. If not, they're going to do it after when they come back after Labor Day.
Okay. The one thing I would like to say is I'd like to thank everybody who commented on this. Some of these were great questions. We tried to answer them the best as we can, and we'll try to keep following up with these questions. So keep the questions coming. So I'd like to thank you for chiming in. We love this debate back and forth. We may not agree on everything, but at least we have a cordial debate to discuss what's going on in America.
Yes, and you can hear Ray and I on All American Gunslingers. That is our podcast where we kind of get a little bit loose and a little we get very, very unpolitically correct.
Trust me, they do.
And you can check us out. We do a live stream at 6:30 at All American Gunslingers on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on Getter Truth. We are on Twitch, so you can reach out to us at allamericangunslingers@gmail.com if you want some more information, and we will talk to you guys soon.
And keep following Ubaldi Reports till next Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Keep following Ubaldi Reports.